Stop everything for the next 60 seconds and let these words find you exactly where you are sitting right now. That tightness across your shoulders that does not leave even when you lie down, that low hum of urgency that follows you into every quiet room, that feeling that you have to do one more thing before you are allowed to breathe. Do not call that discipline anymore. It stopped being discipline a long time ago. Maybe the last 72 hours have felt strangely heavy in a way you cannot explain to anyone who has not lived inside your head. Perhaps you finished everything on your list and still went to bed feeling behind. Maybe you prayed the same prayer you have prayed for months and heard nothing move. Maybe you found yourself awake at 3 in the morning doing math about a situation that math cannot solve. But hear me clearly, because this one sentence is the reason this message found you tonight. What you are waiting for is not late. It has been arriving the whole time. It could not land because the one place it needed to land never stopped moving. Something has been working overtime to keep you in motion, and I want you to understand exactly why. It is not afraid of your effort. Your effort has been feeding it for years. It is afraid of your stillness, because a person who has learned to be still cannot be exhausted into settling for less than what was promised. You are not becoming powerful by outworking everyone around you. You are becoming powerful the moment you stop paying a tax you were never assessed. Within the next 24 hours, the pressure to prove yourself, the urge to chase what should be walking toward you, and that low-grade guilt that visits you every single time you sit down, can begin to loosen their grip on you, not because you fought them harder, because you finally stopped feeding them. And you chose this. You chose to keep your integrity when quitting would have been easier and nobody would have blamed you. You chose to stay kind in rooms that did not deserve your softness. You chose to keep believing long after the evidence stopped cooperating with your faith. Think back to that one moment this week when you finally sat down. Maybe it was in the car before you walked into the house. Maybe it was on the edge of the bed with your shoes still on. Maybe it was the 10 seconds you stood at the sink and did not move and did not reach for anything. You thought that moment was weakness. That moment was the only time all week that heaven had a clear runway, and you got up too fast. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm may have placed it in front of you, but your awareness is what chose to stay, and staying is the first act of the posture I am about to teach you. Something older and far more precise than any system built by human hands arranged for you to hear this on a day when you were tired enough to actually listen. So stay with me all the way to the end, because in the next stretch of time I am going to hand you 3 things you can carry out of here, whether or not anything else in your life changes tonight. I am going to show you the exact mechanism that turns honest effort into interference and give it a name so you can catch it the moment it starts. I am going to walk you through the 4 signals that tell you your season has changed instruction, so you stop running a strategy that expired. And I am going to give you a way of resting that is not collapse and is not avoidance, but is an actual position of authority with a legal precedent older than the nation you live in. Do not step away from this. Your future self needs you to understand the difference between something arriving and something being received, because they are 2 separate events, and nobody ever taught you that. If you leave this moment unchanged, you will get up tomorrow and do the same thing you did today with the same result, and you will call that faithfulness. You will keep knocking on a door that has already been opened, and the sound of your own knocking will be the reason you never hear it swing. I have sat with people in this exact place for more than 20 years. I remember one woman in particular who came to me after a service, and she was not crying, which is what I noticed first. She was too tired to cry. She listed everything she had done: the fasting, the early mornings, the 7 years of showing up when nothing showed up back. And at the end of the list, she asked me one question, and the question was not, "Why has God forgotten me?" The question was, "What else am I supposed to do?" That question is the disease, not the delay, the question, because there is a lie that has been whispered over you for years, and it is very specific. The lie says that the reason nothing has arrived is that you have not yet done the one thing that would unlock it. So you keep searching for that thing, another discipline, another practice, another version of yourself that finally deserves it. The lie never says you are worthless. It is smarter than that. It says you are almost enough, and almost is the most expensive word in the human language. But Scripture hands you a completely different verdict, and it does not hedge. Exodus 14:14 says the Lord will fight for you, and you need only to be still. Notice what it does not say. It does not say the Lord will help you fight. It does not say the Lord will fight alongside you while you carry your half. It divides the labor, and it gives you the smaller half, and the smaller half is stillness. That is not a promise of an easy life. It is a promise that there is a category of battle where your movement is the only thing that can lose it. Chosen one, I want you to hear how strange the situation you are in actually is. You are not a person who does too little. Nobody who does too little ever finds a message like this one. People who do too little sleep just fine. They do not stand at the sink at 11 at night, wondering what they missed. You are here precisely because you are the kind of person who would rather break than be accused of not trying. And that quality, which is genuinely a virtue, has been quietly recruited against you. Let me describe you back to yourself, and you tell me how much of this lands. Your body has been sending you invoices. There is a tension that sits between your shoulder blades that massage does not resolve, because it is not muscular in origin. You wake up already behind. Your jaw is doing work at night that you have no memory of assigning it. You have noticed that you no longer yawn deeply. You breathe from the top third of your lungs, in short economical sips, the way a person breathes when they are about to be asked to move. Your emotions have started to flatten, not into sadness, into a kind of gray efficiency. Things that used to move you now register as items. A song that once opened you now plays in the background while you handle something. You are not depressed. You are running a system that has no spare capacity, and all requires spare capacity. Your dreams have gotten strange, or they have stopped entirely. Some of you have been dreaming about houses you have never lived in, about water, about being late for something that is never named. And some of you have simply gone dark, and that darkness bothers you more than the strange dreams ever did, because you used to be someone who received things at night. And then there are the outside signals, doors that open a crack and then stall, conversations that almost happen, money that arrives exactly on the day it is needed, and never one day earlier, so you can never plan, only survive. Opportunities that come to you at the precise moment you have no capacity left to receive them, and you have started to wonder whether God has a sense of humor or a grudge. None of those are punishments. Every single one of them is the same reading on the same gauge. Now let me give the reading a name, because a thing you cannot name will keep happening to you, and a thing you can name starts losing power the moment you say it out loud. What you have been paying is the striving tax. Here is what it means. Every act of effort has two costs, not one. The first cost is obvious. It is the time, the energy, the money, the sleep. Everyone knows about the first cost and everyone budgets for it. The second cost is invisible, and almost nobody accounts for it. And it is this: effort narrows you. It has to. In order to push, your whole system has to select a direction and exclude everything that is not that direction. That narrowing is exactly what makes effort work. It is also exactly what makes you blind. So when you strive, you are not only spending energy, you are also purchasing tunnel vision, and you are paying for it, whether or not the striving succeeds. That is the tax. It is levied on the attempt, not on the outcome. And here is the part that will sit with you all night. The things you have been asking for do not arrive down the tunnel. They arrive from the periphery. Almost every genuinely good thing in your life came in sideways. Think about it honestly. The friend who changed everything, the job you were not looking for, the conversation at the wrong event, the person you almost did not speak to. Life does not deliver through the front door you are staring at. It delivers through the side gate you are too focused to watch. So a person under a heavy striving tax is a person who has narrowed their reception field down to the one channel where the answer statistically almost never comes. They are not lazy. They are not faithless. They are aimed. And being aimed at the wrong aperture for 7 years feels exactly the same from the inside as being abandoned. Chosen one, sit with that, because I do not want you to receive it as an idea. I want you to receive it as a diagnosis. You were not ignored. You were unreachable. There is a difference between those two sentences that will take you the rest of your life to fully spend. Being ignored means the sender stopped. Being unreachable means the sender never stopped, and every single package went out, and every single package came back marked with a phrase you have never seen, because heaven does not print receipts. Undeliverable. Recipient in motion. I have watched this in my own life, in a way I am not proud of. There was a season, years ago, when I was running 4 commitments that all mattered, and none of which I could put down. I told myself it was obedience. It was not obedience. It was terror wearing the clothing of obedience, which is the most successful costume terror has ever designed, because nobody confronts you about it. People praise you for it. They bring you meals. They tell your spouse how blessed they are. And in that season, my wife asked me to sit on the back step with her for 10 minutes. Not to talk, to sit. And I remember the physical sensation in my chest when she asked. It was not reluctance, it was fear. My body treated 10 minutes of stillness as a threat, and I want you to understand what that means. Because if your body treats stillness as a threat, then rest is not available to you as a choice. It has been removed from the menu. That is where most of you are, not unwilling to rest, unable to. There is a mechanism in you that has learned that stopping is dangerous, and it enforces that lesson faster than your theology can argue with it. So let us open the mechanism, because this is the part that changes things. Picture a lake at the top of a mountain in the early morning. When the surface is still, that lake holds the entire sky, every cloud, every ridgeline. A bird crossing it 100 meters up appears on the water with perfect fidelity. The lake is not doing anything. It has produced nothing. It has generated no light of its own, and yet it contains a sky. Now throw one stone, just one, not a boulder, a stone the size of your thumb. The sky vanishes, not partially, entirely. The ridgeline becomes noise. The bird disappears. And here is the detail that matters most. The sky did not go anywhere. The sky is exactly where it was, unchanged, undiminished, still shining down on that water with the same intensity it had 4 seconds earlier. The only thing that changed is that the surface can no longer render it. Chosen one, that is your mind. That is not a poetic comparison. That is a description. And now I want you to understand what has actually been happening in your life, because you have not been throwing one stone. You have been standing in the middle of that lake, walking every day, from the moment your eyes open, checking, planning, calculating, rehearsing conversations that have not happened, replaying conversations that already ended badly, running probability trees about money at 2 in the morning. You have been in the water the whole time, and then you have looked down at the water and concluded that there is no sky. There is a sky. There has always been a sky. You have simply never once looked at it through a still surface, and so you have no idea what your own life actually looks like when it is at rest. Let me push this further, because I do not want you to leave with a pretty image. I want you to leave with a working instrument. Consider what stillness does that motion cannot do. Stillness is not the absence of activity. Stillness is a higher resolution state. The still lake is doing something extraordinarily difficult. It is rendering the entire sky in real time at perfect fidelity, which is more information than the disturbed lake is capable of holding at any level of effort. You cannot compensate for a disturbed surface by trying harder to reflect. There is no version of the moving lake that reflects better through determination. So when I say to you tonight that you must rest, understand that I am not asking you to do less. I am asking you to switch into the only state that is capable of the specific task in front of you. Rest is not the absence of movement. Rest is the resolution at which arrival becomes visible. And now, look at what that reframe does to the last several years of your life. The seasons you have been calling wasted were not wasted because nothing came. They were wasted because everything came and none of it registered. That is a completely different kind of grief, and I know it might feel worse for about 10 seconds. Stay with me, because it is not worse. It is infinitely better. A season where nothing was sent is a season you cannot recover. A season where everything was sent and nothing landed is a season you can recover starting tonight, because the sender has not changed his policy. Chosen one, think about Elijah for a moment, because scripture handles this with a bluntness that religion has spent centuries softening. Here is a man who has just won the single most dramatic public confrontation in the entire prophetic record. Fire from the sky, the whole nation watching, total vindication. And within one day he is running for his life across the desert, and he sits down under a broom tree, and he asks God to let him die. That is the sequence. Peak performance, then collapse. Not because his faith failed, because he had been running on a striving tax that had come due, and the invoice arrived the moment the adrenaline left. Now watch what heaven does. There is no rebuke, there is no assignment, there is no "what else are you supposed to do?" An angel touches him and gives him bread and water and tells him to sleep. And when he wakes, the same angel gives him more bread and tells him to sleep again. 2 rounds of food and 2 rounds of sleep before a single word of instruction is spoken. The most important prophetic conversation of Elijah's entire life, the one where God passes by in a sound so quiet that scripture struggles to name it, does not happen until after he has been fed and rested twice. It could not have happened before. A man in that state cannot hear a whisper. He can only hear wind and earthquake and fire, and God was in none of those. Do you understand what that account is telling you? The still small voice is not rare because God is stingy with it. It is rare because it is quiet, and quiet requires a surface capable of registering quiet. Heaven did not withhold the encounter from Elijah. Heaven built the receiver first, with bread and sleep, and then spoke. Chosen one, what is coming for you does not need your help. It needs your address, and your address is rest. Now, I want to hand you something practical, because a diagnosis without an instrument is just a more sophisticated way to feel bad. There are 3 kinds of tired, and almost nobody separates them, which is why almost nobody recovers. The first kind of tired is physical. You worked, your body spent fuel, and it wants fuel back. Sleep fixes it, food fixes it. This kind is honest, and it keeps its promises. If you rest, it leaves. The second kind of tired is emotional. You carried something heavy for somebody. You absorbed a room. You held a boundary that cost you. Connection fixes it. Being witnessed fixes it. Crying, oddly, fixes a great deal of it. This kind also keeps its promises, though it takes longer. And then there is the third kind of tired. This one does not respond to sleep. You can take a full week away and come back and feel it waiting for you in the driveway. It does not respond to connection either, and this is the cruel part. Because when you are in it, you cannot fully enjoy the people who love you. You are present in the room, in the way a phone is present when it is on the table with the screen face down, physically there, attending to something else. The third kind of tired is not a fuel problem, and it is not a heart problem. It is a state problem. It is what happens when a system has been held in one mode for so long that it has forgotten how to enter the other mode. And the reason sleep does not touch it is that sleep is unconsciousness, and unconsciousness is not the same as rest. You can sleep for 9 hours in a state of high alert and wake up as depleted as you went down. Every parent of a newborn knows this. Every person who has slept in a house where an argument was coming knows this. Rest is not unconsciousness. Rest is a conscious state, and it has to be entered on purpose. And that is why a person can be exhausted and still be completely incapable of resting. Chosen one, if you have been quietly ashamed because you sleep and wake up tired, if you have wondered whether something is medically wrong with you, if you have taken vacations and come home feeling like you did not go anywhere, I want to lift something off you right now. You are not broken. You are running the third kind of tired, and you have been trying to solve it with tools built for the first two. That is why nothing has worked. Not because you did not try, because you brought a bucket to a wiring problem. And here is the doorway. The third kind of tired is the only one of the three that has a spiritual dimension attached to it in Scripture, and that is not an accident. When the writer of Hebrews says, "There remains a rest for the people of God," and then says something that ought to stop every reader cold, that we should make every effort to enter that rest, he is not being clever with words. He is telling you that this rest is a place you go into, not a gap you fall into. It has an entrance. It can be missed. And apparently it is possible to work hard at entering it, which means it is not passivity. Make every effort to enter rest. Read that again slowly. The only thing your effort is actually good for, according to that sentence, is getting you into the state where effort is no longer the operative force. Effort has exactly one legitimate job, and you have been using it for every job except that one. I want to show you what this looked like in the life of somebody I sat with, because principles land differently once you have seen them wearing a face. There was a man who came to a midweek gathering I was teaching maybe 8 years ago. He owned a small business, 3 employees, the kind of operation where the owner is also the emergency plumber and the accountant. He had a specific problem. He was working 80 hours, and the business was shrinking, and he could not understand it, because in the first 4 years, he had worked 80 hours, and it had grown. He assumed the answer was 90 hours, and I asked him one question. I asked him to tell me about the 3 best decisions he had ever made in the business. Not the busiest days, the best decisions. He thought for a while, and then he told me. The first one came to him in a hospital waiting room while his mother was in surgery. The second one came on a Sunday afternoon when his internet had been down for 2 days. And the third one, he said, came to him in the shower, and he laughed when he said it, the way people laugh when they have just heard themselves. 3 best decisions of his entire working life. Not one of them arrived during working hours. Every single one arrived during an enforced gap, and he had spent 4 years systematically eliminating every gap from his calendar in the name of growth. Chosen one, do your own inventory tonight. Take the 3 or 4 turning points of your life and ask where you were standing when each one arrived. I have done this exercise with hundreds of people, and I have almost never had somebody come back and tell me the answer was, in the middle of maximum effort. It is the drive home. It is the waiting room. It is the walk. It is the shower. It is 3 in the morning when you finally stopped arguing with the ceiling and surrendered. Your entire life has been quietly running a controlled experiment, and the results have been consistent, and you have never once read them. Now hear me carefully so I am not misunderstood, because there is a false version of this teaching circulating, and it has hurt people. I am not telling you that work is bad. I am not telling you to abandon your responsibilities and wait for provision to walk through the wall. That is not rest. That is abdication. And abdication has a completely different fruit, and you can tell them apart by their fruit. Rest produces clarity. Abdication produces fog and then panic. Rest produces right action that arrives at the right size. Abdication produces no action and then frantic action at the worst possible moment. Rest makes you easier to be around. Abdication makes you defensive. The difference is not how much you are doing. The difference is what you are doing it from. 2 people can perform the identical task, and one of them is executing an instruction they received in stillness, and the other is generating motion to keep a feeling away. From the outside, those look identical. From the inside, they are opposite states, and only one of them leaves a residue of peace when the task is finished. That is your test, and it is a good one, so take it with you. When the task ends, what is left in you? If what is left is quiet, you were working from rest. If what is left is a hunger for the next task before you have even set this one down, you were not working. You were running. Chosen one, I have one more thing to place in your hands before we go deeper, and it is the beginning of the answer to the question you came here with. You came here asking what you are supposed to do, and the answer I am building toward is not do nothing, because nobody can sustain do nothing, and anybody who tells you otherwise has never had a bill arrive. The answer is that there is a specific posture that a person occupies when what has been arranged for them finally lands. And that posture is not a mood, and it is not a personality type, and it is not something the naturally calm people got, and you did not. It is a state. States can be lost, and states can be restored. And the reason that sentence matters more than anything else I will say tonight is that a loss can be mourned, but a state can be re-entered. You are not grieving something that is gone. You are locked out of something that is still there. And the difference between grief and being locked out is that being locked out has a solution. What is coming for you does not need your permission, and it does not need your help. It needs a surface, and a surface is the one thing in this entire arrangement that was left to you. Chosen one, as we move deeper into this, I want to change the picture, because the lake shows you the mechanism, but it does not show you the cost, and you need to feel the cost before the rest of this will move you. So, think about a harbor instead. A ship carrying everything you have prayed for has been at anchor outside your harbor for a long time. It is not lost. It is not delayed by weather. The cargo is intact, and the manifest has your name printed at the top of every page. It is sitting there, in sight of land, and it cannot come in for one reason only. The water inside the harbor will not settle, and a ship of that size cannot dock in disturbed water without destroying the very thing it came to deliver. And every morning for years you have stood on the shore and shouted at the horizon and asked why it will not come in. And every morning the answer has been the same, and you have never heard it because you were shouting. The harbor is not the ship, the harbor is you. That is what nobody explains when they teach about waiting. They teach you to wait as if waiting were a passive holding pattern where you simply endure until God changes his mind about the timing. But there is a kind of waiting where the delay is not on the sender side at all. The delay is sitting in the receiving conditions, and no amount of praying for the ship to hurry will change the depth of the water in your own harbor. I need to be careful here, because I am not saying every delay in your life is your fault. That would be cruel, and it would be false. There are delays that are pure formation. There are delays that are protection. There are delays where God is holding something back because the version of the thing you asked for would have cost you your family. Those are real, and I will not flatten them. But I have watched enough lives up close to tell you this without hesitation. A large portion of what people call unanswered prayer is not unanswered at all. It is unreceived. And the tragedy of the unreceived is that it looks exactly like the unanswered from the inside. And so people spend decades grieving a silence that was never actually silent. Chosen one, hold this question with me and do not let it go, because I am going to come back to it later in this message, and the answer is going to matter more than you expect. Over the past several years, something has been found inside research laboratories that most people who care about the things we are discussing tonight have never been told. Not because it contradicts anything sacred, because it came in from a direction almost nobody in our world is watching. A small group of researchers, led by a doctor in New York who has spent 2 decades on this one question, found something about the way the human mind is physically built that explains something spiritually. Sensitive people have felt their entire lives and have never once been able to name. Something fundamental enough that it traces back to work that won a Nobel Prize. And so simple in its application that it honestly sounds suspicious the first time you hear it. I am going to tell you exactly what they found later in this message, and I am going to tell you why I waited. But right now, just hold this one question in the back of your mind while we keep going. What if the fog you have been fighting is not age, and not a lack of discipline, and not a failure of faith? What if something was taken from you? Now let me give you the first real instrument of the night, because everything I have said so far has been diagnosis, and you did not come here to be diagnosed. You came here to be moved. There are 2 kinds of seasons, and they run on opposite instructions, and almost all of the pain in a sincere life comes from executing the instruction of one season while standing in the other. The first is a building season. In a building season, the work you do accumulates. Every hour compounds. Effort correlates directly with outcome. and the correlation is close enough that you can feel it in real time. You put in more, and you get more, and the feedback is fast enough to keep you going. Building seasons are exhilarating even when they are brutal, because exhaustion in a building season has a receipt attached to it. The second is an arrival season. In an arrival season, the building is finished. The thing has been made. It is now in transit toward you, and the entire task has changed from construction to reception. And here is the part that ruins people. In an arrival season, effort does not compound, it interferes. The same behavior that was your greatest asset 3 years ago becomes the primary obstacle now. Not because you got worse, because the physics of the season changed and nobody sent you a memo. This is the single most common place I find people stuck, and it is almost always the most faithful ones who are stuck there. Because faithfulness is precisely what makes a person keep running an instruction long after it expired. So, how do you know? That is the question that matters, and I am going to give you 4 signals. Write them down if you can. If you cannot, they are simple enough to carry. The first signal is that effort has stopped producing proportional results, not 0 results, disproportionate ones. You put in twice what you used to and you get back a fraction. In a building season, that means you are doing the wrong thing. In an arrival season, it means you are doing the right thing in the wrong mode. The tell is this. Ask yourself whether the work is bad or whether the work is fine and simply is not converting. If the work is genuinely good and it is not converting, you are almost certainly past the turn. The second signal is that the good things in your life have started coming in sideways, unrequested, from directions you did not cultivate. A person reaches out who you have not spoken to in 6 years. Someone recommends you for something you never applied for. A resource shows up attached to a relationship you did not build strategically. In a building season, results come from the channels you built. In an arrival season, they start coming from channels you did not build. And that shift is not random. It is the signature of the season. The third signal is that rest has started to feel like a moral failure rather than a physical need. This one is counterintuitive, so stay with me. In a building season, rest feels like recovery, and your body accepts it. In an arrival season, something in you starts to resist rest specifically, with an intensity that is out of proportion to the situation. That resistance is not laziness fighting discipline. It is the old instruction fighting the new one. The instruction that built the last chapter does not want to be retired, and it will use your conscience as its lawyer. The fourth signal is the one people almost never notice, and it is the most reliable of the 4. Your capacity for detail has quietly dropped, while your capacity for pattern has quietly risen. You find it harder to do the small, precise administrative things you used to do easily, and at the same time you have started seeing whole shapes at once. You know things about situations before you have evidence. You read rooms faster. You have opinions about people within 30 seconds that turn out to be right. That is not decline. That is a reallocation, and it is one of the most misread experiences in a sincere life. You conclude you are losing your edge. You are not losing your edge. Your edge is moving to a different faculty because the season requires a different faculty, and nobody told you that was going to happen. So you interpreted a promotion as a decline. Chosen one, sit with that 4th signal for a moment, because I know exactly how many of you have been quietly frightened by it. You have been wondering whether something is wrong with your mind. You have noticed the word that will not come, the name you should know, the reason you walked into the room. You have started making jokes about it, so you do not have to be afraid of it out loud. And then in the same week you will know something about a person or a situation with a certainty that has no evidence behind it, and that turns out to be exactly correct. Both of those are happening in the same head, and you have been filing them separately, and they are not separate. They are 2 readings from one instrument that has changed what it is measuring. Now, I will be honest with you and tell you that there is more to this than a season change, and that the drop in detail and clarity is not purely spiritual, and that there is a physical layer underneath it that has been studied and named. That is the thing I asked you to hold on to a moment ago. We are coming back to it. But before we do, you need the spiritual architecture. Because a physical answer given to a person who has not received the spiritual architecture will be used as another tool for striving, and that would make everything worse. So stay with me. I want to give this season change a name, so it stops being an atmosphere and becomes an object you can point at. What you are living through is the motion blur. Take a photograph of a still object in bright light, and you get detail down to the thread. Take a photograph of the same object while the camera is moving, and you get a smear. Now here is the important part. If you did not know the camera was moving, you would examine that photograph and conclude that the object itself was blurry. You would conclude something was wrong with the object. You might spend years trying to sharpen an object that was never blurry for a single moment. Chosen one, your life is not blurry. Your future is not vague. The reason you cannot see clearly what you are supposed to do next, the reason your direction feels smeared, the reason you have prayed for clarity for 2 years and received fog, is not that God has withheld the image. It is that the camera has not been still long enough to resolve it, and you have been praying for a better picture while refusing to put down the camera. I want to show you this in Scripture because there is a parable that Jesus tells which almost nobody preaches, and it is the most important agricultural teaching in the entire record for a person in your position. He says the kingdom of God is like a man who scatters seed on the ground, and then he says the man sleeps and rises, night and day, and the seed sprouts and grows, and he does not know how. The earth produces by itself, first the blade, then the head, then the full grain in the head. And when the grain is ripe, he puts in the sickle, because the harvest has come. Read what that man does and does not do. He scatters. That is real work, and it is not optional. Then he sleeps and rises. That is the entire middle of the parable. Sleep and rise, night and day. And the text says explicitly that he does not know how the growth is happening. He does not know how. That phrase is in there deliberately. The growth is not only outside his labor, it is outside his understanding. And the parable presents this as normal rather than as a problem to be solved. And then, at the end, he acts again, decisively, with a sickle, at exactly the right moment. That is the shape of an arrival season. Definite work at the front, definite work at the end, and in the middle, a long stretch where the only faithful behavior available to you is to sleep and rise, and let a process you do not control and cannot see run to completion underground. Now imagine a farmer who could not tolerate the middle. Imagine him going out at night with a lamp and digging up the seed to check on it. Every night. Is it growing? Is it growing yet? Why is it not growing? He would not be a bad man. He would be an anxious man. He would be a man who cared enormously about the harvest, and he would have no harvest at all, and the reason would never once be a lack of effort. Chosen one. How many times have you dug up your seed this week? How many times have you checked the thing, refreshed the thing, reopened the conversation that was already finished, sent the follow-up message that was not needed, rehearsed the outcome in your head at midnight, as though rehearsing it could accelerate it? Every one of those is a lamp and a shovel, and every one of those interrupted a process that was running perfectly well in the dark. If this is landing on you right now, I want you to do something small before we go on, and it costs you nothing. Just leave one word below this message. One word. Do not explain it. Do not write a paragraph. Write the word arriving. That is all. Not because a word in a comment box changes anything in heaven, but because there is something that happens in a person when they name a thing publicly instead of only privately. And I have watched that small act mark the beginning of a shift in more lives than I can count. If you cannot think of what to write, write that one word and let it stand. And if you are somewhere you cannot type, then say it out loud where you are. It counts the same. Now let me take you somewhere that is going to reorganize how you understand the last several years. I told you that in an arrival season, the good things start coming in sideways. I want to make that specific because vague encouragement is worthless and you have had enough of it. Think about Ruth for a moment. Here is a woman with nothing, widowed, foreign, poor, attached to an old woman with no prospects, in a culture that had no mechanism for her survival. And what does she do? She goes to glean, which is the ancient practice of walking behind the harvesters and picking up whatever they dropped. Now understand what gleaning actually is. Gleaning is not farming. She did not plant that field. She did not water it. She had no equity in it whatsoever. Gleaning is the deliberate practice of receiving what a process you did not run has already produced. And the text says something that translators have wrestled with for centuries. It says, "She happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz." The Hebrew there is almost comically casual. Her chance chanced upon it. Scripture is going out of its way to tell you that the most consequential positioning of her entire life did not come from strategy. She was not networking. She was not looking for a husband. She was not running a plan. She was doing the small, honest thing in front of her, in a receiving posture, in a field she did not own, and the entire trajectory of her family line, which runs directly to David and beyond, turned on a morning where she was not trying to make anything happen. Chosen one, I am not telling you to stop working. Ruth worked. The text says she worked from morning until evening with barely a rest. But look at what kind of work it was. It was work inside a harvest somebody else had produced. That is the exact posture of an arrival season, and it is not passive at all. It is enormously active. It is simply active in a completely different direction than construction. You are not being asked to stop moving. You are being asked to stop building and start gathering. And those two look similar from a distance, and they feel nothing alike in the body. Now let me future pace this for you, because I want you to feel where this goes, not just understand where it goes. Imagine 6 months from now, not a fantasy version of your life, a realistic one, with the same address and largely the same people. But one thing has changed. You wake up and there is a gap between opening your eyes and the arrival of the list. Right now, that gap does not exist for you. Right now, the list is waiting at the surface of consciousness, and it boards you before your feet touch the floor. In this version, there are maybe 40 seconds where you are simply a person in a bed in the morning, and in those 40 seconds, you notice the quality of the light. You get through the first part of the day, and something goes wrong, the way something always goes wrong, and you notice that your response arrives about 2 seconds later than it used to. That 2-second gap is the entire difference. In that gap, you can see the whole shape of the situation, instead of only the threat inside it. And because you can see the shape, you handle it in a way that does not cost you the rest of the afternoon. Somebody asks you a question about your future, and you notice you have an answer, not a hopeful answer, a clear one. Because the camera has been still long enough for the image to resolve, and the direction that has been smeared for 2 years is now just sitting there. Obvious, the way things are obvious once you can actually see them. And at some point in that 6 months, something arrives. It comes in sideways, from a direction you did not cultivate. And the difference between that version of you and the version of you sitting here tonight is not that you deserved it more. It is that you were still enough to notice it when it came, and you had enough capacity left to say yes to it. That is what is actually at stake, not whether it comes, whether you are in a condition to receive it when it does. Chosen one, what is coming for you does not need you to hurry it. It needs you to be reachable, and reachable is a posture, not an achievement. Before we go further, I want you to do something with your body, because this teaching does not fully install through the ears. It installs through the nervous system, and your nervous system is the thing that has been running the old instruction. Wherever you are, let your shoulders drop about 2 centimeters. Most of you just discovered they were up. Now let your tongue come away from the roof of your mouth. Almost nobody knows they are holding it there. And now, without changing anything about how you are breathing, simply notice where the breath stops. For most of you, it stops somewhere around the top of the ribs. Do not fix it, just notice it. That is a body that has been told for years that something is about to be required of it. That is not a character flaw. That is a body doing exactly what it was trained to do by circumstances it did not choose. And I want you to feel, right now, How much of what you have been calling your personality is actually just a posture you have been holding so long that it started answering to your name? Chosen one, you are not an anxious person. You are a person carrying an unpaid striving tax in your shoulders. Those are different, and one of them can be set down. Let me tell you about a woman I met in a small church in the middle of nowhere, because her situation is going to sound familiar to about half of you. She had been praying for one specific thing for 11 years. 11. She had a notebook. She had dates in it. And she told me, with no self-pity at all, that she had begun to suspect that God was real, was good, and simply was not interested in her particular file. I asked her to tell me about the 11 years, and somewhere in the middle of the telling she mentioned, as an aside, that 4 separate times in those 11 years something had come close, and she had turned it down. Not because it was wrong, because the timing was bad, because she was in the middle of something, because she did not have the capacity that month, because she was tired. 4 times. She said it as a footnote. She did not connect it to the 11 years at all. Chosen one, I did not say anything for a long moment, because I was not sure how to hand somebody a thing that heavy. And then I asked her one question. I asked her what she had been doing in the weeks around each of those 4 occasions. She knew immediately. All 4 times she had been in a stretch of maximum effort. 2 of them were during a period of extra shifts. 1 was during a family crisis she had taken on alone. 1 was in a month where she had committed to 3 things she should have committed to 1. The answer had come to her door 4 times in 11 years, and 4 times out of 4 it had found nobody home because she was out working on getting the answer. That is the unreceived pile. Somewhere in the record of your life, there is a pile. It is not a pile of things God refused you. It is a pile of things that arrived while you were unavailable. And I know that is a difficult sentence to sit under, and I want to tell you the 2 reasons it is actually good news. The first is that it means the sender never stopped. That pile is proof of activity, not proof of neglect. A person with a large unreceived pile has been enormously attended to. The second is the one that matters more. Heaven does not run a single delivery attempt policy. Nothing in the entire record suggests that you get 1 chance. Israel circled the same mountain repeatedly. Peter got asked the same question 3 times. The pattern throughout is not one offer and a closed file. The pattern is repetition until reception, which means the thing in your pile is not gone. It is in orbit, and orbits come back around. But I will tell you the honest part too, because I am not going to sell you a soft version of this. Every time it comes around and finds you unavailable, something in you learns a little more deeply that it does not come, and that learning is the actual damage, not the missed delivery, the conclusion you drew from it. So the work in front of you is not to chase down the pile. You cannot chase it. The work is to become available before the next pass and to stop drawing conclusions from data that was collected while you were not home. Chosen one, hear the shape of this again, because this is the 2nd time around the same truth, and it should be landing deeper now than it did the first time. What is coming for you does not need your effort. It does not need your worthiness. It does not need your explanation. It needs a still harbor and a person standing on the dock with empty hands. And your empty hands are not a sign that you have nothing. They are the only equipment the job requires. Chosen one, as we move into this next layer, I want to hand you something you can use tomorrow morning, because understanding a mechanism and being able to operate it are 2 different competencies, and I have no interest in leaving you with only the first one. Everything we have looked at so far points to one gap, and I want to name that gap precisely before I show you how to close it. There is a distance between the moment something becomes available to you and the moment you actually take hold of it. In most lives, that distance is not measured in years, it is measured in seconds. It is the 2 seconds between an opportunity appearing in a conversation and you either recognizing it or talking past it. It is the 4 seconds between an instinct arriving and you either following it or overriding it with a reason. That distance is the receiver gap. And here is what makes it so quietly devastating. It is too small to be noticed and too frequent to be survived. A person with a wide receiver gap does not lose one big thing once. They lose 4 small things a day, every day, for a decade. And at the end of the decade, they conclude that life did not offer them much. Life offered constantly. The gap ate it. Now understand what determines the width of that gap, because it is not intelligence, and it is not spirituality, and it is not how much you want it. It is state, nothing else. A person in a settled state has a narrow receiver gap. They hear the thing under the thing in a conversation. They notice the door. They feel the instinct arrive, and they have room to follow it. A person in a driven state has a wide gap, and it is wide because their attention is committed. Every unit of attention that is already spoken for is a unit that cannot notice anything new. Attention is not infinite, and it does not multitask, no matter what anyone told you. You have been told your whole life that focus is a virtue. Focus is a magnificent tool and a terrible permanent residence. Focus is a rifle. There are moments that require a rifle, but most of what heaven sends you does not arrive down the barrel of your intention. It arrives at 45 degrees, quietly, and it does not announce itself, and a rifle cannot see it. Chosen one, do you understand what I am telling you? You have been losing things in the gap, not because you are careless, because a person cannot be aimed and open at the same time, and you have been aimed for years without a break. So here is the instrument. I am going to give you the actual posture in 4 parts, and I want you to notice that not one of these 4 parts requires you to add anything to your life. Every one of them is a subtraction. The first part of the arrival posture is what I call the unfinished stop. Here is the rule. Once a day, stop in the middle of something rather than at the end of it. Not when the task is complete, in the middle. Put the tool down while the work is still visibly unfinished and walk away for 10 minutes. I know exactly what happened in your chest when I said that. That reaction is the entire point. Because a person who can only stop at completion is not a person who rests. They are a person who is permitted brief intermissions by a taskmaster that lives inside them, and the taskmaster decides when. The unfinished stop takes the schedule away from the taskmaster. And there is a practical reason underneath the spiritual one. A mind that stops at completion closes the loop and moves on. A mind that stops mid-task leaves the loop open, and an open loop keeps working in the background without your supervision. Every writer knows this. Every builder knows this. You come back, and the problem has partly solved itself. That is not mysticism. That is what the underneath of your mind does when you get out of its way. The farmer sleeps and rises, and the seed grows, and he does not know how. The second part of the posture is the empty hands minute. Once a day, for 60 seconds, hold nothing. No phone, no cup, no pen, no steering wheel. Nothing in either hand, and nothing being managed. Just sit or stand with your hands genuinely empty and your attention not assigned to anything. 60 seconds, that is all I am asking. Most of you will find that you cannot do it the first 3 times you try, and I want you to expect that so you do not conclude something is wrong with you. Your hands will reach. You will feel a small rising discomfort at about second 20. Around second 40-something in you will produce an urgent memory of a task you must do right now, and it will feel genuinely important, and it will not be. That resistance is not a failure of the exercise. That resistance is the exercise. You are meeting the mechanism directly for the first time in years, and you are meeting it in a situation where it cannot hurt you. 60 seconds of nothing is the safest possible place to encounter the thing that has been running your life. The third part is the unassigned walk. Walk somewhere with no destination and no purpose, not exercise, not an errand with a walk attached to it, not a walk with a podcast in your ears that turns it into education, a walk that produces nothing. 12 minutes is enough, and I want you to pay attention to what happens in your thinking somewhere between minute 6 and minute 9, because there is a shift there that almost everyone experiences and almost nobody has ever had described to them. The first 5 or 6 minutes, your mind runs its list. Then somewhere in the 7th or 8th minute, the list runs out, and there is a small stretch of nothing, and then something arrives that was not on the list. That something is what you have been praying for clarity about. It has been trying to get through for a long time. It cannot compete with the list, so it waits until the list is finished, and the list is never finished in your normal day because you keep feeding it. The fourth part is the Sabbath of the eyes. For a set period each day, do not look at anything designed to be looked at. No screens, no print, no feeds. Look at things that were not made to hold your attention. A wall, a tree, traffic, your own hands. The reason for this one is mechanical. Your capacity to notice is a finite resource that regenerates, and every designed image spends it. A person whose noticing capacity is fully spent every day by things engineered to spend it has nothing left with which to notice the quiet sideways arrival of the thing they have been asking for. You are not distracted. You are drained of the exact faculty required. Chosen one. Look at those four again and notice what they have in common. The unfinished stop, the empty hands minute, the unassigned walk, the Sabbath of the eyes. Not one of them is a spiritual discipline in the traditional sense. There is no praying in any of them, and I did that on purpose, and here is why. Many of you have already turned prayer into work. You have a prayer list, and it has become a second job, and you feel guilty about it, which means the one place you were supposed to be able to rest has been colonized by the same mechanism that took everything else. So we are going to rebuild the state first, in a place the mechanism has no claim on, and then we will bring prayer back into it. And you will find that prayer in that state is a completely different experience from prayer in the state you have been in. It stops being a transmission and starts being a conversation, and most of you have not had the second kind in a very long time. Now let me show you why these four work, because there is something underneath them that is going to reorganize a great deal for you. There are two ways your mind can hold a thing, and they are so different that it is almost misleading to use the same word for both. The first way is gripping. Gripping is what happens when you take a problem and hold it in the front of your attention and turn it over deliberately. It is sequential. It goes one step at a time. It is verbal, which means it runs on language, which means it can only consider what can be put into words. It is superb at execution, and it is superb at analysis, and modern life rewards it more than anything else. And so most adults spend almost every waking hour in it. The second way is holding. Holding is what happens when you take the same problem and set it down somewhere behind your attention and stop turning it. It is not sequential. It works on the whole shape at once. It is not verbal, which is why its answers arrive as a feeling of rightness before they arrive as a sentence you can say. And it does its best work when the gripping side is occupied with something meaningless, like walking or showering or driving a familiar road. Now here is what almost nobody realizes. Those two are not a hierarchy, they are a pair. They were built to work together, and the design is that one hands off to the other and back again in a rhythm. And a person can lose the rhythm. That is what has happened to you. Not that you lost the second one, it is still there. It is that the handoff has stopped happening because the gripping side never lets go long enough for the transfer to occur. And the longer that goes on, the more the handoff itself degrades, until eventually a person can be given a full free afternoon and still be completely unable to enter the second mode. They sit down with nothing to do, and their gripping mind simply keeps gripping on nothing, in circles. You have had that afternoon. You know exactly the afternoon I am describing. Chosen one, this is the thing I asked you to hold in the back of your mind earlier, and we are almost at the point where I tell you what the research found. I am not going to do it yet, because there is one more piece of the spiritual architecture you need first, and if I give you the mechanism before you have that piece, you will do what everyone does with a mechanism, which is turn it into another item on the list. But I will tell you this much now. The handoff between those two ways of holding is not a metaphor, and it is not a personality trait. It is a physical event that either occurs or does not occur, and it has been studied in laboratories for over 40 years. And the reason it stops occurring in most adults is not age, and it is not moral. Hold that. We are coming back. If something in you just moved, leave one word below. Just write the word receiving, nothing else. You do not need to make a case for it or explain your situation to anyone. One word is enough, and one word is often the first honest thing a person has said about their own condition in a long while. Now let me take you to the two sisters, because this is the passage everyone misuses, and I want to hand it back to you correctly. Martha is hosting. There is a house full of people, and there is genuine work to be done, and she is doing it, and she is doing it well. Her sister Mary is sitting on the floor listening. Martha finally has enough, and she does something very human. She does not confront her sister. She goes over Mary's head and asks the guest to intervene. Now here is where almost every sermon on this passage goes wrong. It is preached as though the lesson is that being contemplative is holier than being practical, and that is not what the text says at all. Somebody had to cook. Jesus did not levitate a meal onto the table. The work was real, and the work was necessary. Look at what he actually says to her. He says, she is worried and troubled about many things, and that one thing is needed. He does not say the cooking was wrong. He names her internal state first, worried, troubled, and then he says, something has been chosen that will not be taken away. The rebuke is not aimed at her activity. It is aimed at her state, and at what her state was costing her, in the presence of something that was not going to be in her house again. That is your situation exactly. Nobody is telling you to stop running your household. What you are being told is that there is something in the room right now that will not be in the room forever, and your state is the only thing standing between you and it. And notice one more detail that almost nobody preaches. Mary was not doing nothing. Sitting at the feet of a teacher was a formal posture in that world. It was the posture of a student, and it was a posture that had been closed to women. She was not lounging. She had taken a seat that was not culturally available to her, in a room full of people who would have noticed, and she had done it in public. Receiving is not passive. Receiving is often the most exposed thing a person can do, because it requires you to be seen with empty hands in a culture that measures you by what is in them. Chosen one. That is the fear under your inability to rest, and we are going to face it directly in a moment. But first, I want you to take a breath here, because we have covered a great deal, and there is more coming, and I do not want you to receive this teaching in the exact state the teaching is about. So just be here for a second. There is nothing you need to do with any of this yet. Nothing is being required of you in this moment. The message will hold. You are allowed to simply listen for a while without converting anything into an action item. Feel what happens in your chest when you are told that nothing is required of you right now. For some of you, that is relief. For a lot of you, it is a kind of low panic. And if it is panic, do not be ashamed of it. That panic is information, and it is the most useful information you have received tonight. Now, let me show you Jehoshaphat, because Scripture gives you a battle where the winning instruction was explicitly the opposite of effort, and the text preserves it in detail, and it is one of the strangest passages in the entire record. 3 armies are coming. The kingdom is not capable of surviving the encounter. The king does the right thing and gathers the nation and admits publicly that they have no power against this force and that they do not know what to do. And the answer that comes back is this: the battle is not yours, but God. You will not need to fight in this battle. Position yourselves, stand still, and see. Position yourselves and stand still. Those two instructions sit right next to each other, and I want you to notice that they are not the same thing, and both are commanded. Positioning is active. It is deliberate. It requires you to go to a specific place and face a specific direction, and then, having positioned, stand still. That is the whole of what I have been teaching you tonight, compressed into 6 words by a text 3,000 years old. There is something for you to do, and it is real, and it takes discipline. And what you do is get into position and then stop. And then look at how they went out. They put the singers in front of the army. In front. The most vulnerable, least armed people in the entire formation, walking first into an approaching military force, singing. That is not a battle strategy. That is a posture deliberately adopted at maximum cost, in public, in front of enemies. And the text says that when they began to sing, the ambushes were set. Not before, when they began. Chosen one, The singers went first, not the soldiers. The people whose entire function was to make a sound that produced nothing tactical whatsoever. What is coming for you does not need your sword. It needs your position and your stillness. And your stillness is not the absence of courage. On that day, it was the entire content of it. Chosen one, let me change the picture one more time, because there is an angle on this that will explain something about your life that has probably confused you for years. Think about an old radio, the kind with a dial. The signal is in the room. It is in the room right now, wherever you are sitting, whether or not a radio is present. The broadcast does not require your participation. It does not know you exist. It is simply there, filling the space, saturating everything continuously. And a radio does not create that signal. A radio does exactly two things. It holds still and it tunes. That is the entire technology. Everything else is packaging. Now imagine a radio that could move. Imagine it shaking constantly at high frequency so that the tuner slid across the whole band 4 times a second. What would come out of the speaker? Static. Nothing but static. And here is the part I want you to sit inside. If you had only ever owned a shaking radio, you would conclude, with total sincerity and complete conviction, that there are no broadcasts. You would not think you had a reception problem. You would think you lived in a silent world. And you would be able to produce a great deal of evidence for that belief, because every time you had ever listened, there had been nothing but noise. That is what a life of unbroken striving does to a person theologically. It does not make you an atheist. It is subtler than that. It makes you a person who believes in God in general and has quietly stopped expecting to hear anything in particular. And then you sit in a room where somebody describes hearing from God, and something in you goes cold and tight, and you cannot tell whether that feeling is skepticism or grief. I will tell you what it is. It is a person with a shaking radio hearing somebody describe music. Chosen one, I want to say this clearly because there is a shame here that a lot of you have carried privately for years. The reason you have not heard clearly is not that you are less loved. It is not that others are more spiritual. It is not that you have some unconfessed thing keeping you at arm's length. And I want you to release that particular fear tonight because it is false and it has been eating you. The broadcast has never stopped. Your tuner has been in motion. That is a completely different problem and it has a completely different solution. Let me tell you about a man from a farming family in the middle of the country because he taught me something I have used ever since. He came to a series I was doing and he stayed after on the 3rd night. He was maybe 60. He said he had one question and it was not about his business or his marriage or his health. He said, I have never once heard God and I have been in church for 52 years and I would like to know whether that means something is wrong with me. 52 years. He said it without drama. He had made peace with it in the worst possible way. The way people make peace with a limp. So I asked him about his week, just his ordinary week. And he described it, and it was a farmer week, which is to say, it was relentless from before light until after dark. And then near the end of describing it, he mentioned that in the winter, in the 6 or 7 weeks when there is genuinely nothing to be done, he sits in the kitchen in the early morning with coffee and does not turn on anything. And I asked him what happens in those mornings. He was quiet for a while, and then he said, well, things come to me. And I asked him, what kind of things? And he said, things I need to know. Sometimes about people, sometimes about what to do. He said it the way a man describes something so ordinary it had never occurred to him that it was worth mentioning. 52 years of believing he had never heard, and 6 weeks a year of hearing constantly, and he had never connected the two, because nobody had ever told him that the still kitchen was the equipment. He thought the kitchen was just where he was, when the ideas happened to show up. Chosen one, some of you are exactly that man. You have not been deaf. You have had a very short listening season each year, and you have never once identified it as such, and so you have never protected it, and in some cases you have felt guilty about it, which means you have felt guilty about the only functioning receiver you own. Now here is where I want to take this, because there is a hard piece in it, and I am not going to skip the hard piece. Naaman is a commander, powerful, wealthy, effective, and sick with something that will kill him. He goes to the prophet with horses and chariots and gifts, and he stands at the door, and the prophet does not even come out. He sends a messenger with an instruction, "Go wash in the Jordan 7 times," and Naaman becomes furious. And the text tells you precisely why, which is remarkable because Scripture usually does not explain anger. It says he was angry because he had said to himself, "I thought he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of his God and wave his hand over the place and heal me. I thought he would surely." That is the entire disease in 4 words. He had a picture of how it would come. The picture involved ceremony proportional to his importance. It involved effort and drama and a visible transaction. And the actual answer was so small and so unimpressive and so lacking in ceremony that his first response to receiving exactly what he came for was rage. He nearly went home cured of nothing because the cure arrived in a shape that did not match his expectation of what a cure should cost. Chosen one, how many of your 4 have been like that? I asked you earlier to think about the things that came near and did not land. Now I want you to ask a harder question about them. How many of them did you turn down not because you were too busy, but because they were too small, too ordinary, too unimpressive, not the shape of an answer? It came in through a person you did not respect enough. It came as a suggestion rather than a sign. It came without ceremony, and you had already decided, without ever saying it out loud, that an answer to 11 years of prayer would arrive with a certain amount of weight attached to it. The servants say something to Naaman that ought to be framed on a wall. They say, "If the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says simply, 'Wash and be clean'? If it had been hard, you would have done it." It is the easy instruction that offends you. And that is the thing I most need you to understand about the season you are in. Because the instruction I am giving you tonight is going to run into exactly this wall in about half of you. Rest is an offensively small instruction. It has no ceremony. It costs nothing. It does not demonstrate your seriousness to anyone. There is no way to be admired for it. And that is precisely why it works, and precisely why almost nobody does it. Chosen one, hear the round of this again. One more turn. What is coming for you does not need a great thing from you. It has never once required a great thing from you. It requires the one small, unglamorous, unwitnessed thing that your pride has been calling beneath you and your fear has been calling dangerous. Hold still. That is it. That is the whole instruction. And the reason it feels too easy is that you have been trained by a world that prices everything by its difficulty, and heaven has never once used that pricing model. Chosen one. As we enter this next part of the message, we have to go to the room where the resistance actually lives, because everything I have given you so far will bounce off if we do not. You now know what rest does. You know why motion blocks reception. You have 4 practices that take less than 20 minutes a day combined. And I know with complete confidence that a large number of you will not do them. And it will not be because you did not believe me. It will be because, when you sit down, something rises. So let us look at that something directly and find out where it came from. Because a voice you cannot locate has authority over you, and a voice you can locate does not. Sit down for 2 minutes with nothing in your hands and pay attention to what your mind says. It will not say you are lazy. It is far more sophisticated than that. It will produce, in this order, a sequence I have heard described back to me by hundreds of people with almost identical wording. First, it produces a task, something small and real that you genuinely have to do at some point. It presents this task with urgency that does not match its actual importance. If you decline the task, second, it produces a person, someone who is depending on you, someone who would be disappointed, someone who is working right now while you are sitting. If you decline the person, third, it produces a future, a scene in which the thing you are afraid of has happened, and the reason it happened traces back, in the logic of the scene, to a moment where you stopped. And if you decline the future, fourth and last, it produces a feeling with no content at all. just a rising physical wrongness. No argument, no image, just a body saying no. That fourth one is the real one. The first three are lawyers. The fourth one is the client. Now, where did the client come from? I want to tell you something about how human beings acquire that particular feeling, because in almost every case it was not manufactured by you, and you have been serving a sentence for a crime committed before you were born. Most of you learned, very early, in a house, that stopping was not safe. And you did not learn it from a lecture. Nobody sat you down and taught you a doctrine of worth through productivity. You absorbed it from an atmosphere. Maybe you had a parent who was never still, and you watched, and you concluded that stillness was what happened to people who had given up. Maybe there was an actual scarcity in that house, real money worries, and you registered that the adults relaxed only when there was margin, and there was never margin. So you learned that relaxation was something that happened after a condition that never arrived. Maybe the attention you got was attached to output, not cruelly, just practically. The praise arrived when you produced, and a child does not experience that as a system. A child experiences it as love, and the child learns exactly what love costs and never stops paying that price, at 30 and at 50 and at 70. Or maybe it goes further back than the house you grew up in. Some of you carry a family that came through something, a war, a migration, a depression, a generation that survived by never being caught unprepared, and that vigilance was correct in its own time. It kept people alive, and then it was handed down, intact, to descendants living in completely different conditions, where the same vigilance no longer protects anything and only costs. Chosen one, that is not a character flaw, that is an inheritance, and you can decline an inheritance. Here are the two questions that separate the voice of God from the voice of that inheritance, and I want you to memorize them because they will serve you for the rest of your life. The first question is this: does it accuse or does it invite? Read the entire record from the front to the back and find me one place where God moves a person forward by making them feel worthless. You will not find it. Conviction in Scripture is specific, it names an actual thing, and it comes attached to a door. Accusation is vague, it names your whole self, and it comes attached to a treadmill. If the voice telling you to get up cannot name one concrete thing, and instead simply generates a diffuse sense that you are insufficient, that is not the Spirit. That is the inheritance wearing a robe. The second question is this: does it have a bottom? A true instruction is finishable. Do this thing, and then it is done. The voice we are talking about never terminates. There is no amount of work that satisfies it, and you can verify this from your own history. Think about the biggest thing you ever accomplished. How long did the peace last afterward? For most of you, the answer is measured in hours, and then the floor moved and the standard reset, and you were behind again by dinner. Anything that cannot be satisfied is not asking you for work, it is feeding. Now, let me hand you the thing that dismantles this, because you cannot argue your way out of an inheritance. You have to be given a different one. There is a detail at the very beginning of the record that I think is the most underpreached sentence in the whole book. After the 6 days, the text says God rested. And then it says something that should stop you cold. It says, He blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Understand what just happened there. That is the first thing in the entire creation account to be called holy. Not a mountain, not a temple, not a person, not a nation. The first holy thing is a block of time in which nothing is produced. That is the holy seventh. Sit in the strangeness of that. Before there was any sacred place, before there was any priesthood, before there was any law, holiness was assigned to a period of non-production, which means that in the architecture of reality, as the text presents it, non-production is not the absence of the sacred, it is the original location of it. And there is a second detail that matters even more for the specific people listening to this. When the command to keep that day is given later, it is given to a population of former slaves. That is who receives it. People who, for 400 years, were defined entirely by output. People for whom a day of rest was not merely unavailable, but was the single thing that most sharply distinguished a free person from property. And the reason attached to the command in Deuteronomy is explicit. Remember that you were a slave, and that God brought you out. The rest is presented as the proof of the Exodus, not the reward for it. The proof. Chosen one, do you see what that does to the voice in your chest? That voice is not asking you to be responsible. It is asking you to keep behaving like property in a country where you were legally freed. And the practice of stopping is not self-indulgence. It is the weekly ceremony in which a formerly owned person demonstrates that they are no longer owned. That is why it feels dangerous. Of course it feels dangerous. The first free day after 400 years of forced production would feel like standing in an open field with no cover. I have watched people cry over this, and not gently. There was a woman at a retreat, a hospital administrator, extremely capable, the sort of person everyone relies on. And when I taught this, she went very quiet, and then she said one sentence out loud that I have never forgotten. She said, "I have never in my life been allowed to be a person who was not useful." Never in her life. 58 years old. And here is what she said next, which is the part I want you to hear. She said, "And I do not know who I am if I am not useful, and I am afraid of that person." Chosen one, that is the true fear under all of this, and I want to name it so it stops operating in the dark. You are not afraid of resting. You are afraid of what you will find when the noise of production stops, because you suspect there might be nothing underneath it, and you have built a life specifically designed to make sure you never have to find out. I want to tell you what is actually underneath it, and I want you to hear this from somebody who has sat with a great many people at the moment they stopped for the first time. What is underneath is not nothing. What is underneath is a person who has been waiting a very long time to be met, and who is exhausted, and who has been carrying this whole thing alone, and who is far more loved than they have ever been able to feel while moving. Every single time. In 20 years, I have never once seen the empty room people are afraid of. Not once. Chosen one, let me turn this one more time, because there is an angle here that is going to explain something about your relationships that you have probably blamed yourself for. Think about what it takes to receive a guest, not to host an event, to receive a person. Somebody arrives at your door, and the entire quality of that arrival is decided in the first 90 seconds, and it is decided by one thing: whether the person opening the door is available. You have been on both ends of this. You have arrived somewhere and been welcomed by someone who was clearly in the middle of 6 things, and they said all the right words, and you knew within a minute that you should not stay long. And you have arrived somewhere and been welcomed by someone who stopped and put down what they were doing and looked at you, and something in you unclenched before you had even sat down. Same house, same words, completely different event. Now here is the part that will sting a little, and I'm going to say it kindly, but I'm going to say it. The people in your life have been arriving at your door for years, and most of them have been met by the first version, not because you do not love them. You love them enormously. That is not in question, and it never was. But love that arrives through a person in a gripping state gets compressed on the way out. It comes through as management, as logistics, as "are you okay?" and "did you eat?" and "did you handle that thing?" All of which is love, and none of which is presence. And the ones closest to you can feel the difference, and most of them have never said anything about it, because how do you complain about somebody who is doing everything for you? I am not telling you this to lay something heavy on you. You are carrying enough. I am telling you because it is the strongest argument I have for why this matters, and because I want you to understand that the state we are talking about is not a private spiritual amenity. It is the medium through which every relationship you have is conducted. You cannot receive God in a state you cannot receive your own child in. It is the same faculty. There is not a separate spiritual receiver and a human one. There is one, and it is either open or it is committed elsewhere. Chosen one, let me give you the smallest test I know, and it takes 3 breaths. The next time you are about to do something, anything, Before you do it, take 3 slow breaths and then ask one question. If nothing bad could happen as a result of not doing this, would I still want to do it? That is it. That is the whole test. Action that comes out of flow survives that question. You still want to do it. The wanting is intact, and it might even get stronger, because it turns out the thing was genuinely yours. Action that comes out of fear collapses immediately. The moment you remove the consequence, the desire vanishes, and what is left is a person who was about to spend an hour of their one life avoiding a feeling. Run that test 6 times tomorrow. Do not change your behavior yet, just gather data. Most people find that somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of what fills their day does not survive the question, and that discovery alone has reorganized more lives than any teaching I have ever given. Now let me show you where this goes, because I do not want you to leave with a diagnosis and a test and nothing to walk toward. Imagine a year from now. Same house, mostly the same people, mostly the same obligations, because life does not clear out to make room for your growth, and anyone who tells you it will is selling something. But there is a room in your house where you sit in the morning, and it is unremarkable, and it has become the most important 12 minutes of your day. And in those 12 minutes, things come to you, not visions, ordinary, specific, useful things. What to say to the person you have been avoiding? The reason a situation that has confused you for months is actually simple. A name you have not thought about in years, arriving for no reason, 3 days before you needed it. And you have learned to write them down, because you have learned that they arrive quietly and leave quietly. And in that same year, the people around you begin to say a strange thing to you. They begin to say that you seem different, and when you press them, they cannot be specific. They will say something like, "You are just easier to be around," which is the ordinary language for something enormous. It means the compression is gone. It means love is coming through you at full width for the first time in years. And somewhere in that year, the thing you have been asking for comes around again, because it does come around again, and this time you are home. Chosen one, that is not a fantasy, and it is not a promise with a date on it. I cannot tell you what will arrive or when. Nobody honest can. What I can tell you is what has been true in every life I have watched turn, which is that the change was never in the sending. It was always in the receiving, and the receiving was always the part that was actually available to be changed. What is coming for you does not need a better version of your effort. It needs a person who is home when it knocks. And being home is not an achievement. It is a decision made about 12 minutes, repeated. If this has reached something in you, mark it. Leave a single word below. Just write the word free. That is all. Not a testimony, not an explanation. One word, and let it be the first small public act of a person who is no longer property. And if you cannot write it, say it once out loud where you are. It is the same act. Now I want to close the loop I opened with you earlier in this message. I told you there was something found in research laboratories that I was going to come back to, and I want to tell you why I waited this long to bring it forward. Because what they found is not information. What they found is an explanation for a specific failure, and an explanation is only useful to a person who already understands the full shape of the problem. It explains. If I had given it to you an hour ago, you would have received it as a technique. You would have added it to your list, executed it with the same gripping mind that has been executing everything else, and it would have joined the pile of things that did not work for you. You now understand the shape. You know about the tax. You know about the gap. You know about the 2 ways of holding and the handoff between them that has stopped happening in you. You know why it feels dangerous and where that danger was installed. So now the explanation can actually be received. But before I give it to you, I have to tell you one more thing, and it is the thing that will decide whether any of this matters. Because here is the question that has probably been sitting under this entire message for you, and you may not have put it into words yet. Why does knowing all of this still not produce movement? You have understood things before. You have had insight before. You have sat in a room and felt the truth of something all the way through your body, and then woken up on Thursday and been exactly the same person. That has happened to you enough times, that you have quietly stopped trusting your own moments of clarity. The answer to that is not in your mind, and it is not in your will, and it is not a discipline problem. It is somewhere you have not looked yet. So let me say the whole thing plainly now, with no images and no scripture, because you deserve one stretch of this message where I simply tell you what I think is happening to you in the most ordinary language I have. Here is why. There is a state your mind enters when it stops gripping. In that state, the two ways of holding that I described earlier begin to coordinate, and information that has been sitting in the non-verbal side becomes available to the verbal side. That coordination is what people experience as clarity, as intuition, as knowing what to do, and as the sense of being spoken to. It is not the whole of hearing from God, but it is the receiver, and without a functioning receiver, almost nothing gets through. Here is what has happened to that state. It has degraded, not because of your age and not because of your character. It degraded because the coordination between those two sides is a trained physical process. It depends on regular periods of low demand, and modern life has removed those periods almost completely from an ordinary adult day. There is no longer a gap anywhere. Every cue, every commute, every pause between two tasks is now filled, and the process that used to happen in those gaps has fewer and fewer opportunities to run, and like anything that runs less often, it has become harder to start. And here is who this affects most. It affects sincere people the worst. It affects the ones who take responsibility seriously, who carry others, who do not let things drop, because those are exactly the people whose days have the fewest gaps in them. The person who cares least has a receiver in better condition than yours. That is not fair, and it is not a moral statement about you. It is a mechanical outcome, and mechanical outcomes can be reversed mechanically. That is the whole of it. That is what I believe has been happening to you. You are not far away. You are not being disciplined. You are not behind. You are unreceived, and unreceived has a solution. That clarity you just received is real, but clarity is not movement. Chosen one, do you remember the question I asked you to hold at the beginning of this message? I asked you what would happen if the fog was not age, and not a lack of discipline, and not a failure of faith. I asked what would happen if something had been taken from you. Here is the answer. It won a Nobel Prize. In 1981, a researcher named Dr. Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize for work on the two halves of the human brain. What his research established, and what has been built on continuously since, is that those two halves are not redundant, and they are not in competition. They are designed to synchronize. And the synchronized state is not a metaphor. It is a measurable condition, and it produces a specific quality of thinking that the halves cannot produce separately. That synchronized state is the one I have been describing to you all night without naming it. It is the handoff. It is the still lake. It is the moment on the walk at minute 8 when the list runs out and something arrives that was not on the list. It is the state the farmer was in at his kitchen table in the winter for 52 years without ever knowing there was a name for it. Here is what the research on this shows about how common it is. In young children, the two sides communicate freely and constantly. The figures that get cited put something close to 98% of small children at what the researchers classify as a creative genius level of whole mind function. And then something happens across the years of formal schooling and adult life. And by the time a person is fully grown, the proportion who still maintain that level of cross-communication is smaller than 1 in 1,000. Read that again. It is not that you are below average. It is that almost the entire adult population has lost the same thing at roughly the same rate, in roughly the same way. And a loss that universal is not a moral failure. It is an environment. That is the thing that was taken from you. Not your faith, not your favor, the synchronization. And I want to be very careful here, because I am not telling you that a state of mind is the same thing as the presence of God. It is not, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something small dressed up as something enormous. God is not a state, and he does not live in your head, but the receiver is real. and you have spent years assuming the silence was on the sending end. I want to tell you about two people before I tell you what any of this leads to, because I have watched what this does, and the stories matter more than the mechanism. There was a woman in California who described what her life felt like before. She had tried everything her community offered: prayer, journaling, every practice, every retreat, and she kept arriving at the same place. She believed the words. She could not feel the reality behind them, not in her body, not in the ordinary texture of her days. And after about 10 days of this, she said something cleared. A channel that had been closed was simply open, not because she had tried harder, because the receiver had been repaired. And there was a man in Texas who described something that sounded completely different and was actually the same thing. He was the person everyone in his family leaned on. He held everything together for years, while his own interior life quietly went flat. What he described afterward was not spiritual language at all. He said the fog lifted. He said he could hold a decision in his head again without it sliding away. He said he made a call about his business that he had been unable to make for 11 months, and he made it in an afternoon, and he was right. Two people, two coasts, two completely different vocabularies, one identical mechanism underneath. That is because of what the team I am about to describe found. A neurologist in New York named Dr. Daniel Barone spent about 20 years on the specific question of how to restore that cross-communication in an adult brain that has lost it, not how to think better, not how to focus, how to restore the synchronization itself. What his team built is an 8-minute auditory sequence. You put on headphones, you close your eyes, and you listen. That is the entire protocol. There is nothing to learn, nothing to repeat, no technique to master, and nothing to get right or wrong. They call it the genius switch. Now let me be precise about what it is and what it is not, because the distinctions matter and because I know some of you have been burned before. It is not a sound wave product. That is the thing I want to be clearest about, because that is the category most people will assume it belongs to. Their own material goes out of its way to separate itself from that entire field. The genius switch operates on the synchronization between the two halves, not on producing a particular kind of activity in one of them. Their term for it is neural sync. It is a different mechanism, and it produces a different category of result. And here is how it compares to the alternatives, because there are alternatives, and I want you to know them. There is a breathing practice that targets the same coordination. It works. It also takes 20 minutes a day, and it is genuinely difficult, and most people abandon it inside 2 weeks. There is clinical neurofeedback, which is the medical route to the same destination, and it works well. And it runs about $300 an hour in a clinic, and a home machine runs around $7,000. And there is meditation, which absolutely works, and which I recommend to anyone, and which typically takes months of consistent practice before the coordination begins to change in a measurable way. 8 minutes passive with headphones. That is the entire ask. Chosen one, I need to say something now, and I want to say it as plainly as I can. The genius switch is not for everyone. It is for the person who understands that God prepared not only the promise, but the mind that has to walk into it. It is for someone who has been sincere for years, who has done the work, who has felt the call clearly and kept returning to it long after the evidence stopped cooperating, and who is finally willing to stop treating the fog as a character flaw and start treating it as something that has a specific address. Most people who hear this will move on. They have already accepted the reduced version of their own mind as permanent, and they made that peace years ago, and they are not looking to have it disturbed. You are still here. That is not an accident. That is the exact kind of persistence that belongs to the person this was built for. Now let me tell you about the cost, and I am going to tell you all of it. Colleagues who reviewed it before release told the team it would be an extraordinary value at $500, and given that the clinical equivalent is $300 an hour, that assessment was not unreasonable. It was not released at $500, it was not released at $200, and it was not released at $100. It was released at $49. And on the page where it currently sits, there is an additional $10 taken off. which brings it to $39. $39, one time, with lifetime access, delivered by email immediately, with no shipping and nothing to wait for. 4 things come with it at that price. A guided visualization from a top-rated creator on one of the major calm and sleep applications, built around seeing your life unfold across money, love, health, and happiness. A grocery guide that names 10 common American foods that contribute to mental fog, and 5 shortcuts that save most households over $100 a month at the ordinary stores you already shop at. A manifestation text more than 100 years old, which is the root that most modern teaching on this subject grew out of, and which sells for around $20 on its own. And a printed infographic of the 5 habits that matter most for building the life you actually want, designed to go on a wall. And all of it sits behind an unconditional money-back guarantee. Listen to it once, listen to it 80 times. If it does not do for you what it has done for the 18,456 people who have used it, every dollar comes back, with no conditions and no argument. Chosen one, hear the frame I want to put around that, because I do not want you to make this decision out of urgency, and I am not going to manufacture any. The provision that God has already arranged near you becomes visible in the synchronized state in a way that it simply does not in the partial state. Not because the provision is new, because the receiver that can recognize it has been restored. What has been arranged for you is already in motion. The only real question is whether you arrive at the meeting point with the receiver online. That is the whole of the urgency, and it has nothing to do with a page or a price. It has to do with how many more passes you want it to make while you are not home. One more thing worth naming directly, because it will save some of you money and disappointment. If you go searching the ordinary music and video services for something with a similar name, you will find things. The team looked at them. Most had no neural sync built into them at all. They carry a similar name because the barrier to naming something is essentially zero. The mechanism is the entire difference, and the mechanism only exists in what his team actually built. The direct page is the only verified source. So if your spirit resonates with what has been described, the link is in the description below this message and in the first pinned comment. It goes to the page where Dr. Barone and his team made it available, and nowhere else. You can read every detail there before deciding anything. Nothing is hidden and nothing is rushed. And if it is not for you, that is completely fine, and the rest of this message belongs to you exactly the same. Now let me say the thing that has to be said next, because I have watched what happens when it is not said. The tool does not replace God. It does not replace obedience. It does not surrender on your behalf, and it does not close a door for you or open one. What God is doing in you is not conditional on any tool, and never has been. But a receiver that has been repaired gives what God is already doing more of what it was designed to land in. That is all it does. That is all it has ever claimed to do. And now we return to the deeper current of this message, because there is something waiting in it for you that has nothing to do with any of that. Chosen one, as we move into this next unfolding, I want you to feel the weight of what heaven has been doing underneath this entire season, because there is a mercy in it that you have not been able to see from inside. There is a moment in the record of Jacob that I think about more than almost any other. He is running. He has deceived his brother. He has lost his home. And he lies down in the open country with a stone for a pillow, which is the detail that tells you everything about his condition. And he sleeps. And in that sleep, he sees a stairway with the traffic of heaven moving up and down it, right there, in that specific patch of ground. And when he wakes, he says, the sentence that I want you to carry out of tonight. He says, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. I did not know it. Not, the Lord came to this place while I was sleeping. Not, God visited me here. The Lord is in this place, present tense, ongoing, and had been the entire time. And the only new information Jacob received that night was about himself. And notice the condition he was in when he found out. He was not fasting, he was not praying, he was not in a temple, and he was not in a good spiritual season. He was a fugitive lying on the ground with a rock under his head. in the only state a man in that situation ever reaches, which is the state of a person who has finally run out of options and stopped moving. Chosen one, how many places in your life have you walked out of, concluding that God was not there, when the only thing that was true is that you did not know it? That job, that city, that stretch of years you have written off entirely, that relationship you have filed under wasted time. I am not telling you those were secretly wonderful. Some of them were genuinely hard, and I will not romanticize them. I am telling you that the record is full of people who were standing in the middle of a divine appointment and could not perceive it, and that in every single case the missing element was perception and not presence. Look at Hagar in the wilderness. She has been sent away with a child and a skin of water, and the water runs out, and she puts the boy under a bush because she cannot watch him die. And then the text says something very carefully. It says God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Not, God created a well. Not, a well appeared. God opened her eyes, and she saw a well. The well was there the entire time. It was there while she was walking. It was there while she was weeping. It was within sight of the bush she laid her son under. And the intervention from heaven was not the production of water. It was the opening of the eyes of a woman who was in too much distress to see what was already in her field of vision. Chosen one, that is the most merciful and the most terrifying passage in the entire record for a person in your condition, and I want you to hold both halves of it. The terrifying half is that it is entirely possible to die of thirst within sight of a well. The merciful half is that heaven does not consider that outcome acceptable and intervenes, and that the form of the intervention is not the creation of a new resource, but the restoration of the ability to perceive an existing one. And now put that next to the servant of Elisha. The city is surrounded. The young man goes out in the morning and sees an army and horses and chariots on every side, and he panics. And his panic is completely rational, because he is describing accurately what is in front of him. And the prophet does not argue with him about the army. He does not say you are exaggerating. He prays one sentence, open his eyes so that he may see. And the young man looks again at the identical hillside and sees that it is full of horses and chariots of fire. Two men, one hillside, one moment, two entirely different worlds, and the only variable is perception. Chosen one, I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it before we go on. What if the thing you have been asking God to send has already been sent, and the prayer that would actually change your life is not send it, but open my eyes? I know how that lands, because I know that some of you have been praying send it for a very long time, and there is a loyalty in you to that prayer. It has been your companion. Changing it feels like giving up on it. You are not giving up on it, you are finishing it. The sending was completed a long time ago. What remains is the seeing, and the seeing is the part that was always assigned to you, and the seeing is the part that stillness restores. So let me be useful rather than only moving, and tell you the 4 disguises an answer wears when it arrives, because I have watched people miss all 4, and I would like you to miss fewer of them. The first disguise is that it comes too small. You asked for a way out, and you received a phone number. You asked for provision, and you received a single unglamorous piece of work that pays a fraction of what you need. And because the size does not match the size of the prayer, you file it as unrelated. But almost nothing in the record arrives at full size. The oil starts as 1 jar. The bread starts as 5 loaves in a boy lunch. The nation starts as 1 elderly couple with no children. Heaven has an unbroken habit of sending things at seed size to people who are praying at harvest size, and the seed is refused for being small more often than it is refused for any other reason. The second disguise is that it comes through a person you have discounted. Naaman almost died of this. The instruction that saved his life came through a servant, and it was the servants who had to talk him into obeying a messenger. In your life, this looks like the advice you did not take because of who said it. The younger person, the one whose life is more of a mess than yours. The relative you find exhausting. Heaven has no policy of routing important things exclusively through impressive people, and in fact seems to prefer the opposite, possibly for the specific purpose of finding out whether we are listening to the message or to the packaging. The third disguise is that it comes as a subtraction. You asked for the door to open, and instead, something closed. And you experienced that closing as a rejection and mourned it, and possibly spent a year trying to reopen it. Some of the most decisive answers in a life arrive as removals. The relationship that ended, the role you did not get, the plan that collapsed. Those are not always losses, and the tell is this: if a closing is followed within a season by an unusual availability of time, attention, or freedom that you did not previously have, you were not being denied, you were being cleared. The fourth disguise is that it comes as an instruction rather than a gift. This one is the hardest, and it is the most common. You prayed for a result and you received a directive. Go and wash. Stretch out your hand. Go and gather empty jars from your neighbors, and do not gather a few. And a directive feels like being handed more work by a God who was supposed to be handing you rest, which is exactly what Naaman thought. But look at what those directives all have in common. Every one of them is small, immediate, and specific. And every one of them is the last thing that has to happen before the thing arrives. The instruction is not a delay of the answer. It is the final centimeter of it. Chosen one, take those 4 with you, because I promise you that at least one of them is sitting in your life right now, currently misfiled. I watched this happen in real time with a woman who had been praying for 2 years about her financial situation, which was genuinely serious and not a matter of preference. And during those 2 years, her sister had repeatedly offered to have her come and stay for 6 months to reset, and she had refused every time, because accepting felt like failure, and because her sister has a way of saying things. And when we walked through the 4 disguises, she went completely quiet, and then she said, "It came through my sister, did it not?" It had come through her sister 11 times. It was disguise number 2, wearing disguise number 3, because accepting it required subtracting the apartment she was fighting to keep. And she had spent 2 years asking God for an answer she had been declining almost monthly. She took it, and I want to be honest and tell you that the 6 months were hard and the relationship was difficult. And I want to be equally honest and tell you that she came out of it with no debt for the first time in 9 years, and that the thing she had actually been praying for, underneath the money, was rest. And she got it in the last place she would ever have looked for it. Now let me slow this down for a moment, because we have covered a great deal, and I want you to stay with me all the way to the end of this. There is nothing you need to do with any of this tonight. Nothing is being asked of you in this exact moment. If your mind has started making a list while I have been talking, let the list go for a few minutes. It will still be there. Lists are extraordinarily loyal. Just be here. Feel the chair, or the bed, or the floor underneath you. Notice that it is holding you up and has been the entire time without asking you for anything, and that you have not once had to help it. That is a small picture of the thing I am trying to describe. If something just turned over in you, leave one word below. Just write the word open. That is all. And if you have been quietly carrying a specific thing you have prayed for over many years, you do not need to name it publicly. One word holds it. Chosen one. And for the one who felt something move when the mind was mentioned earlier in this message, that door is still open in the description and in the pinned comment. It is a small step, and it costs almost nothing. But small steps taken from a clear mind have reorganized entire seasons, and that is the last time I will mention it. Everything that remains in this message belongs entirely to something else. Because before we close, I have to tell you the part I have been holding back, and it is going to reframe everything I have said tonight. I told you earlier about the unreceived pile, about the 4 times, the 11 times, the small things that came near and found you unavailable. And everything I have taught you tonight has been aimed at that pile, because that pile is real and it is recoverable, and the practices I gave you will begin to recover it. But there is something underneath the pile, and I did not tell you about it earlier because you would not have been able to hear it correctly. You would have heard it as an accusation. Now you can hear it as what it actually is. There is one thing in your life that has not been sent, not because you were unworthy, not because you missed it. It has genuinely not been released, and heaven has been holding it deliberately, And I want to tell you why. Because the why is the most merciful sentence I know. It is being held because of its size. Chosen one, the small things arrive constantly, and they are the ordinary traffic of a life, and you have been missing some of them, and we have addressed that. But every once in a while, there is a delivery that is not sized to a person. It is sized to a line, to a family, to everyone who will come through you and after you, and to some who will never know your name. And a delivery of that size cannot be made to a person in motion, not because of a rule, because of physics. It would land on someone who is already at capacity, and it would not bless them. It would break them, and then it would break everyone who was supposed to receive it through them. Think about Joseph, and think about him honestly rather than devotionally. At 17, he has the dream. The whole thing is shown to him in advance. He knows the outcome, and the outcome is accurate, and every part of it eventually happens exactly as he saw it. And then there are 13 years. Slavery, a false accusation, a prison. 2 years forgotten by a man who had promised to remember him. 13 years between the dream and the position. Now ask the question nobody asks about that story. What would have happened if he had received it at 17? At 17, he was a young man who told his brothers about a dream, in which they bowed to him. That is not a monster. That is a normal 17-year-old with a large gift and no capacity to carry it. And there is no shame in that description, because it is simply what 17 is. Give that young man authority over the food supply of the ancient world during a 7-year famine, and he does not save a nation. He becomes the most dangerous man alive, not because he is evil, because he has been handed a weight that no 17-year-old on earth has the structure to hold, and weight without structure does not make a person strong, it makes them cruel. The 13 years were not punishment, and they were not delay. They were the construction of a container. And here is the detail in that account that will not leave me alone. When he finally stands in front of his brothers, the men who threw him in a pit and sold him, he does not do what a man who spent 13 years rehearsing would do. He weeps so loudly the Egyptians outside can hear it, and he says, "Do not be angry with yourselves. That is not the 17-year-old. That is a different structure entirely, and the difference between those two men is exactly what the 13 years built. Chosen one, hear me carefully now, because this is the reframe of your entire waiting. You have been asking why it has not come, and the honest answer in some cases is that you missed it, and we have dealt with that. But in the deepest case, the one that matters most, the answer is that it has not come because it is too large to be handed to someone at a sprint. And every year of the delay that you have been mourning has been going somewhere. It has been building a floor. You have not been standing still for years. You have been being widened. And I want you to feel the specific mercy in that, because it is not the mercy of an easy God. It is the mercy of a God who refuses to hand a person a weight that would end them, even when that person is begging for it, and even when the begging goes on for a decade and turns bitter. That is a harder love than the one most people preach. It is also the only kind that has ever actually held anyone up. Now here is why everything I taught you tonight matters more than you have realized. Because rest is not only how you receive, rest is how you widen. The capacity that a large delivery requires is not built by effort. You cannot work your way into a bigger container, and every one of you has tried. Capacity is built in the state we have been describing all night, because capacity is the ability to hold something without gripping it, and gripping is precisely what a person in constant motion is made of. Joseph did not build his container in Potiphar's house by working harder. He built it in a prison, which is the most enforced stillness a human being can be subjected to, in a place where nothing he did could accelerate his release by a single day. Chosen one, some of you are in an enforced stillness right now, and you have been fighting it as though it were the enemy. The illness, the unemployment, the season where every door you push does not move. I am not going to tell you those things are good. Some of them are genuinely terrible, and I will not put a bow on them. But I will tell you what I have watched, over and over, in more lives than I can count. The people who came out of those seasons largest were not the ones who fought them hardest. They were the ones who, at some point, stopped fighting the stillness and started using it. And that brings me to the thing I most want to leave you with, and it is about the people who come after you. You inherited the striving. We traced it earlier. The house, the atmosphere, the vigilance that was correct in a generation that needed it and is only expensive in yours. Now, understand that it works in both directions. Whatever you settle into becomes the water that the people around you swim in. Your children, if you have them, the people you lead, the younger ones who watch how you handle a hard week and quietly calibrate their entire nervous system against yours without either of you saying a word about it. If you do not learn to rest, you will hand your grandchildren the exact voice that has been in your chest tonight, and they will not know where it came from either, and they will serve it as faithfully as you have, and they will call it responsibility, and they will be praised for it, and it will cost them the same thing it has cost you. And if you do learn to rest, then somewhere down the line there is a person who will find it ordinary to stop, who will never have to be taught this in a message like this one at the age of 50, to whom stillness will simply be normal, because they grew up in a house where somebody stopped and nothing bad happened. Chosen one. That is a real inheritance, and it costs nothing to leave, and almost nobody leaves it. So let me say the sentence again that I said to you at the very beginning, and let it mean something different now than it did then. What you are waiting for is not late. It has been arriving the whole time. It could not land, because the one place it needed to land never stopped moving. And now you know that the landing place is not only a surface, it is a container. And you know that the surface is repaired by stillness, and that the container is widened by the same thing, and that the very season you have been calling wasted has been quietly performing the second job while you were mourning the first. You have not lost the years, you have been under construction in them. If that landed, mark it. Leave one word below. Just write the word widened, nothing more than that. You are not making a claim about your future by writing it. You are simply agreeing with something about your past. Chosen one, as we move into this final unfolding, I need you to understand that what we have been discussing tonight is not a lifestyle preference, and I want to name the size of it. There is a reason that of all the practices available to a human being, the one that has been most thoroughly removed from ordinary life is the one that costs nothing and requires no equipment. Think about what has actually happened in a single generation. Every gap that used to exist in an ordinary day has been filled. The queue, the waiting room, the bus, the 2 minutes before a meeting starts, the stretch of road you knew by heart, the time between putting your head on the pillow and falling asleep. Every one of those was, for the whole of human history, a small, unavoidable period of low demand, and every one of them is now occupied. And nobody made you fill them. That is the part that matters. There was no decree. It simply became available, and it was pleasant, and you filled them, and so did everyone else. And inside of about 15 years, the human race quietly lost the last unstructured moments it had. And almost nobody noticed, because the loss arrived as a convenience. Chosen one. If there were a force with an interest in a population that cannot receive, it would not need to attack faith. It would not need to close a single building or ban a single book. It would only need to make sure that nobody was ever still. I am not telling you a conspiracy. I am telling you a physics. Whatever else is true, the effect is the same. A generation that cannot enter the receiving state will still believe, still gather, still sing, and still be almost entirely unable to hear anything specific. And you have felt that. You have sat in rooms full of sincere people and sensed that something that used to be there was thinner now, and you assumed it was you. Now let me arm you, because knowing this is useless if the first interruption undoes it. Here are 3 rules for protecting a still season, and I give them to you in the order you will need them. The first rule: expect the interruption on day 3. There is a pattern so consistent that I now warn people about it in advance. You begin. Day 1 is difficult and slightly uncomfortable. Day 2 is easier and you feel something. And then somewhere around the 3rd or 4th day, something arrives that legitimately requires your attention. A crisis, a person, an urgent request that no reasonable person could decline. I am not going to tell you what that is. I will only tell you that it happens with a regularity that has stopped surprising me. And the correct response is not to refuse the interruption, because sometimes it is real. The correct response is to have decided in advance that the practice resumes the following day without a negotiation and without a penalty. Because the danger is never the interrupted day. The danger is the story you tell yourself about the interrupted day, and the story is always the same. It says, "See, you cannot sustain this." And that story has ended more good beginnings than any circumstance ever has. The second rule, protect the smallest version. When your week collapses, do not abandon the practice. Shrink it. If you cannot take 12 minutes, take 3. If you cannot take 3, take 60 seconds with empty hands in a parked car. The reason is not that 60 seconds accomplishes what 12 minutes accomplishes. It does not. The reason is that a practice which has been reduced can be restored, and a practice which has been abandoned has to be started again from nothing, and starting from nothing requires an amount of will that you will not have during a hard month. Keep the pilot light on. That is the whole strategy. The third rule, do not measure it. This is the one almost everyone violates, and it is the one that kills the most attempts, and it is subtle enough that people do it while congratulating themselves. You will be tempted to track it, to keep a streak, to notice how many days in a row. And the moment you do that, the practice has been captured by the exact mechanism it was designed to escape. Now stillness has a scoreboard. Now there is a way to fail at it. Now the voice that has been running you has found a way to move in, and it will, because that voice does not care what you are doing as long as there is a number attached. Rest cannot be optimized. The moment you optimize it, it becomes a task, and a task cannot produce the state that only the absence of tasks produces. So do it badly, do it inconsistently, do it without recording it, and trust that a thing done imperfectly for a year changes a person more than a thing done perfectly for 11 days and then abandoned in shame. Chosen one, if you take nothing else from this entire message, take that. I want to tell you about one more person, and then I want to bring this home. There was a man who came to something I taught about 4 years ago, and he was maybe 70, and he did not say a word the whole evening. Afterward, he waited until everyone else had gone, and then he told me that he had been a builder for 51 years and had retired 8 months earlier and was not doing well. And he said the strangest thing. He said, "I thought I would finally rest, and it turns out I do not know how, and I am 70 years old, and I am about to run out of time to learn." And then he said, "I keep going out to the garage." He had built a life on being a man who made things, and when the making stopped, there was a person underneath who had never been met by anyone, including himself. And he was terrified of that person, and he was going out to the garage at night to avoid him. I saw him again about a year and a half later. He was different in a way that was hard to describe. Slower, but not in a diminished way. And I asked him what had changed. And he told me he had started sitting on the front step in the morning for about 15 minutes with nothing. No radio, no coffee at first, just sitting. And he said, I met him. And I asked who, and he said, the one who was in there. And then he said something I will carry to the end of my own life. He said, he was not who I was afraid of. He was just tired. He had been waiting for me a long time, 71 years old, and the meeting took 15 minutes on a front step. Chosen one, whatever you are afraid is underneath the noise. It is not what you think. It is not the empty person. It is not the fraud you suspect yourself of being. It is you, without the armor, tired and enormously loved and waiting. Before this message closes, I am going to speak something over your life, and I want you here for it. So stay with me through these last minutes. But first, if this reached you tonight, do one more small thing. Leave one word below. Just write the word home. That is the whole assignment. Not because it changes anything in heaven, but because there is somebody who will read this later at 2 in the morning in a much worse state than you are in right now, and they will scroll down, and they will find a column of ordinary people who all wrote one word, and it will do something for them that nothing I have said tonight could do. Your one word is not for you. That one is for them. Now I want to take you somewhere before we close, and I want you to let me lead you into it rather than analyzing it, because this last part does not work if you supervise it. Wherever you are, if it is safe to do so, close your eyes. If you cannot close your eyes, then soften them and let them rest on one unremarkable point in front of you, and stop scanning. Now take one breath that is slightly longer on the way out than it was on the way in. Do not force it. Just let the exhale be unhurried, the way it is when you are not going anywhere. Now I want you to picture something. You are standing at the edge of a body of water in the early morning, and it is completely still. There is no wind, the surface is glass, and it holds the entire sky, every cloud, the whole ridgeline, perfectly, without any effort at all. And in your hands there are stones. You have been holding them for a very long time. You know exactly what they are. One of them is the thing you have to figure out. One of them is the person you are worried about. One of them is the money. One of them is the question of whether you have wasted your life. They are heavy and they are specific, and you have been carrying them for so long that your hands have shaped themselves around them. Nobody is going to take them from you. That is not what is happening here. I am simply going to ask you to notice something. You have been holding them over the water, and every time your hands shake, the water moves, and the sky disappears from the surface, and you look down and see nothing and conclude that there is nothing there. Now do this. Do not throw them. Do not make it dramatic. Just open your hands and let them go down. Let them sink. Watch the rings spread out. Watch them widen and slow and flatten. Give it a moment. It takes longer than you want it to, and that is part of it. And now the surface is still again, and look at what is in it. Everything that was always above you is now visible in the water in front of you, not because anything new arrived, because nothing is disturbing the surface. The sky did not come closer. You simply stopped making it impossible to see. Now feel your hands. They are open and empty, and they are the correct shape for the first time in years. That is the shape of a hand that can receive something. A closed hand cannot be given anything, no matter how much the giver wants to give it. That is not a punishment. That is just what a hand is. And place one hand on your chest right now and feel that there is something in there keeping a rhythm that you have never once had to maintain. It has been going since before you were born. It did not ask your permission, and it does not need your supervision, and it has never once stopped to consult you about whether you were working hard enough. That rhythm is the oldest argument against everything the voice in your chest has been telling you. You have been kept alive every second of your life by a process you have contributed absolutely nothing to. Chosen one, stay in that for a moment longer. Do not rush back. And now let me gather everything and hand it to you in one piece, because you have been given a great deal tonight, and I want you to leave holding something simple. Here is the whole of it. Nothing has been withheld from you. The sending has never stopped, not for 1 week of the years you have been mourning. What has been failing is not the delivery. It is the reception, and reception is a state. And your state has been held in one mode for so long that the other mode became unfamiliar, and then became frightening, and then became inaccessible. That mode did not close because of sin, and it did not close because of insufficient faith, and it did not close because God moved further away from you. It closed because you have been carrying an inheritance that told you stopping was dangerous, and because the world around you removed every gap in which the other mode used to run, and because you are a serious person who takes responsibility seriously, and that is exactly the kind of person this happens to hardest. And the way back is not a larger effort, it is a smaller one, aimed at a different target. Stop in the middle of something once a day, hold nothing for 60 seconds. Walk 12 minutes with no destination. Rest your eyes from things designed to hold them. That is the entire protocol, and it is offensively small, and it is the only thing that has ever worked. And underneath all of that, the deeper thing, the delay you have been grieving has been building a floor. The years you have written off have been widening a container. There is something coming to you that is sized to more than one life, and it has been held by a mercy patient enough to look like abandonment from the inside. You were not ignored, you were unreachable. You are not behind, you are unreceived, and you have never once been restless. You have been restless, and that is a deficiency and not a character, and deficiencies get filled. Chosen one, before we close, I want to answer the 4 objections that are currently forming in you, because I can hear them from here, and if I do not answer them tonight, they will quietly dismantle everything by Thursday. The first objection is this: my situation is genuinely urgent, and rest is a luxury for people with margin. I want to take that seriously, because for some of you, it is not an excuse. There is a real bill, there is a real diagnosis, there is a real person depending on you this week. So, hear this precisely. I am not asking you to reduce your output. I have not once tonight told you to do less. I have told you to change the state you do it from, and I have asked you for something between 12 and 20 minutes of a 24-hour day. And here is the part that matters for the person in genuine crisis. In an emergency, the quality of your decisions is worth more than the quantity of your hours, by an enormous margin. One clear decision made from a settled state will outperform 9 frantic ones. The people who come out of hard seasons well are almost never the ones who worked the most hours. They are the ones who made 3 or 4 correct calls at the right moments, and correct calls do not come out of a gripping mind. You do not have time to not do this. That is the actual situation. The second objection is that this sounds like it is for people with a certain temperament, and you are not that person. You have met the calm ones, the ones who seem to move through the world at a different speed. And somewhere along the way you concluded that they got issued something you did not, and that this whole territory belongs to them. That is not how it works. Almost every deeply settled person I have ever met arrived there through a collapse. They were not born still. They were broken open by something, and stillness was what they found on the other side of it, and they will tell you so if you ask them directly. You are not the wrong type. You are earlier in the same process, and you have the advantage of being able to choose it before something chooses it for you. The third objection is that you have tried this before. I believe you, and I want to tell you what I think went wrong, because I have heard this story 100 times, and it is almost always the same story. You tried to rest by removing activity without changing state. You took the weekend off and spent it in exactly the same gripping mind, simply with nothing to grip, which is not restful at all. It is worse. That is why some of you dread holidays. Unstructured time in a driven state is not rest. It is the same engine idling at high revolutions with the added torment of nothing to point it at. The 4 practices I gave you are not about removing activity. 3 of the 4 happen in the middle of an ordinary working day, and one of them specifically requires you to leave work unfinished. They are aimed at the state, not the schedule, and that is the entire difference. The 4th objection is the quiet one, and it is the real one, and almost nobody says it out loud. You are afraid that if you stop, you will find out that the striving was the only reason anything worked, that the whole structure of your life is held up by your vigilance, and that the moment you relax, it comes down and everyone finds out. Chosen one, I want to speak to that one gently, because I have carried it myself. Look at the evidence you already have. Every genuinely good thing you listed earlier, the ones that arrived in the waiting room and the shower and the drive home, arrived while you were not vigilant. Your own history is a running argument against the belief you are afraid of. The vigilance did not build the good things. It has been standing next to them taking credit. Now, let me hand you the Shepherd's Psalm, because it is the most quoted passage in the world, and almost nobody notices the verb. It says, "He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He makes me lie down." Not he invites me, not he suggests it. The verb is compulsion, and it is being used affectionately, and any shepherd will tell you why. A sheep in distress will not lie down. It will stand, on high alert, exhausted, until it collapses. Lying down is a behavior that only occurs when a sheep is genuinely convinced nothing is coming for it. So the making is not authoritarian. The making is the establishment of conditions safe enough that the animal finally believes it can stop. And then, immediately, still waters. Not fresh water, not abundant water. Still. The Hebrew there carries the sense of waters of rest, and there is a practical reason underneath it that any shepherd knows. Sheep will not drink from moving water. The sound frightens them, and the current is dangerous to a heavy fleece. A shepherd who wants a flock to drink has to find still water or make it still, and there are shepherds to this day who dam a small section of a stream for exactly that reason. Chosen one, sit with what that means about your own life. There has been water everywhere. It has been running past you the whole time, and you have been thirsty next to it for years, and not one drop of it has been drinkable for one reason: it was moving. And a soul, exactly like an animal, cannot take in what is in motion. And restores my soul is the third phrase, not the first. It comes after the lying down and after the still water. The restoration is not the cause of the rest. The restoration is the result of it, and it is listed in that order deliberately. You have been asking to be restored so that you can finally rest. The text has it the other way around, and it has had it the other way around for 3,000 years. And notice what is at the very center of that psalm, right in the middle of it, structurally at the heart of the whole thing: a table, prepared, in the presence of enemies. Not after the enemies are gone, in their presence. The table is set while the threat is still visibly in the room, and the invitation is to sit down and eat anyway. That is the exact posture I have been describing to you all night. Not the removal of the threat, the choice to be seated in front of it, because a person who can eat with enemies watching is a person who has arrived at something that the enemies have no access to, and every one of them knows it. And that is why it is written down as a table and not as a victory. Chosen one, you have been standing at the table for years, staying alert in case, and the food has been getting cold, and nobody has taken it away, and nobody is going to. Sit down. Now let me tell you what happens in the days after a message like this, so you are not surprised by it. Tomorrow morning you will wake up and something will feel slightly different. And by about 11 o'clock, the ordinary weight of the day will have covered it over. And by evening, you may not be able to recall what it was you felt tonight. That is not failure. That is how the human nervous system handles anything it has heard once. By day 3, if you have been doing even the smallest version of the practices, something will happen that surprises you. Usually, it is small. A thought arrives that solves something, or you catch yourself in the middle of a reflex, and you see it clearly for the first time instead of just performing it. Mark that moment when it comes, because it is the proof you will need in week 3. By about week 2, the old instruction will make a serious attempt at recapture, and it will not come as an argument. It will come as an opportunity. Something genuinely good and genuinely demanding will appear, and taking it will require exactly the 20 minutes we have been talking about, and it will feel completely reasonable to give them up. That is the moment, not a temptation to do wrong, a temptation to do good in the old mode. That is how it always comes for people like you, because you are not a person who can be tempted into laziness, and whatever has been running you knows it. And in about the 3rd month, if you are still going, something will change that is hard to describe and that other people will notice before you do. Somebody will tell you that you seem lighter, and you will not have a good explanation for them, and you will not need one. I want to tell you about the last person, and then I am going to bring this home. There was a woman who came to a series I taught maybe 6 years ago, and she was in the middle of the hardest thing a person can be in the middle of. Her son was very ill, and the outcome was not known, and she had been living on the edge of a hospital bed for 4 months. And I did not teach her any of this, because you do not hand a mother in that situation a set of practices. I sat with her and said almost nothing, but about a year later she wrote to me, and her son had recovered, and what she said in that letter has shaped everything I have taught since. She said, "I want to tell you what I learned in the hospital." She said, "For the first 2 months I did not sleep, and I did not stop, and I read everything, and I called everyone, and I fought for him every minute." And she said, I would do it again. And then she said, and in the third month I collapsed, and I could not do any of it. And she said, that is when I started to be able to hear him, not God, my son. She said, I had been so busy saving his life that I had not been in the room with him for 2 months, and he was frightened, and he needed his mother present, not his mother efficient. She said, the fighting was necessary, and I do not regret 1 hour of it. But the thing he needed most from me was the thing I could only give when I stopped, and I nearly did not give it to him at all. Chosen one, I have never found a better description of what is at stake here. You are going to spend your life either efficient or present, and the world will reward the first one, and only the second one will be remembered by anybody, including you. Chosen one, I want to slow everything down now, because we are coming to the end, and the end of this is not information. Let the room get quiet, wherever you are. Whatever you were going to do next can wait 4 more minutes. It has waited longer than that for lesser reasons. I want to acknowledge something before we close, and I want to do it out loud, on your behalf, because I suspect nobody has done it for you in a long time. You have carried this by yourself. Not entirely, but mostly. There have been people who loved you and did not know what you were holding, because you did not tell them, because telling them would have made them worry, and you have never been willing to spend other people's peace on your own comfort. You have gotten up on mornings when there was no reason available to you, and you got up anyway. You have been the one who handled it, every time, whatever it was. And nobody ever asked whether you had the capacity, because you had made yourself into the kind of person that nobody has to ask. And you have kept believing, that is the one I want to sit on. After the years, after the specific disappointments that you could list right now without hesitating, after the prayer that did not get answered in the shape you needed it in, you are here, tonight, listening to a message about God. That is not a small thing. That is the most stubborn kind of faith there is, and it is worth more than the kind that has never been tested. None of that has been unwitnessed, not one morning of it. Now I want you to do something with me, and I want you to do it tonight, before you sleep, and not tomorrow, because tomorrow will absorb it. Tonight, before you go to bed, sit on the edge of it for 1 minute, just one. Shoes off, lights low, nothing in your hands. And I want you to put down the 4 stones one at a time, deliberately and out loud if you can. Name them, say the thing you have to figure out, and then say, not tonight. Say the person you are worried about, and then say, not tonight. Say the money, and then say, not tonight. And say the question of whether you have wasted your life, and then say, not tonight, and mean it for 60 seconds. You are not abandoning them. They will be there in the morning, and you will pick them up and you will handle them, because you always do. You are simply demonstrating, once, to a body that has never seen the evidence, that you can set something down and the world does not end. That is the whole ceremony. 1 minute. And it is the first free minute a formally owned person has taken in a very long time. And now, chosen one, place your hand over your heart and declare this with me, out loud if you can, and in a whisper if you cannot, and in your chest if even that is too much tonight. I am not behind. I am not forgotten. I am not too late, and I have not wasted the years. I am a person who has been under construction, and the construction is nearly finished. I am not property. I am free, and I am allowed to stop. I have permission to rest, and my rest is not idleness. It is my position. I release the striving that was handed to me before I could refuse it, and I do not hand it forward. My hands are open, and open hands are the correct shape. I am a still harbor, and what has been arranged for me is coming in. I am reachable. Now feel the weight of what you just said, because that was not a recitation and it was not positive thinking, and I want you to understand exactly what happened in your body while you were speaking. Every one of those sentences contradicts an instruction that has been running in you for years, and an instruction that has never once been contradicted out loud has never had to defend itself. It has simply been the water. What you just did was put a second voice into the room, in your own actual voice, which is the only voice your nervous system has been listening to this entire time. That is why it is spoken and not thought. A thought is a suggestion. A spoken word is an event with a witness, and you were the witness, and something in you registered it. You will not feel different immediately, and I am not going to promise you that you will. What you will notice is that in about 3 days, at some moment of pressure, one of those sentences will arrive in you unbidden, and it will arrive at exactly the moment the old instruction usually speaks, and it will get there first. That is how this actually works, not as a feeling, as a competitor. Chosen one, before I let you go, I want to bless you, and I want to be specific about it, because vague blessings comfort nobody. I bless your stillness, and I bless the courage it takes you to enter it. I bless the part of you that has been afraid of the quiet, and I bless the moment you find out it was never dangerous. I bless your hands as they open, and I bless whatever is going to be placed in them. I bless your capacity to stop in the middle of something without an explanation, and to walk away from a task that is not yours to finish tonight. I bless the container that has been built in you across all the years you thought were empty, and I bless the weight it was made to hold. I bless your eyes, that they would be open to the well that has been in your field of vision the entire time. And I bless the people who come after you, that they would find it ordinary to rest, and that they would never have to be taught this at 50 because they will have grown up watching you. Chosen one last thing, and then I will stop talking and let the quiet do the rest. If this message reached you tonight, leave it a word before you go. Just the word rest. That is all I will ask. And if you know somebody who is currently running on empty and calling it faithfulness, send this to them without a comment attached to it. They will know why you sent it, and some of them will be sitting on the edge of a bed tonight because you did. Now, go slowly. Go with open hands. Go and be still. And so it is. Chosen one, wherever you are right now, know this. When the room gets quiet tonight, and the old voice comes back to tell you that you have not done enough, that voice is not the last word over your life, and it never was. You are not carrying this alone. You never have been. And the thing you have been waiting for has been walking toward you this whole time, patiently, for years, waiting only for the moment you finally stood still, long enough to